That's right. You're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, KSQT Prunedale. We got Omar in the studio along with Adela, your host. And you're listening to From the Streets. Adela's over here dancing to the cumbia. Say hello to the people, Adela.
Thank you, Omar. Gracias
I
for
like
that
the moves.
welcome.
You got that good energy. You're dancing.
I'm dancing with my eyes. Yeah. We're ready to dance.
Well, we have a very special show today. We have a special guest named Mark Weller. He's going to be on the show with us.
Let's talk about what our conversation is going to be about today.
Yeah.
So, welcome again, everyone. As Omar is here dancing off, I'll let us know that we're going to focus a lot on hearing from Mark Weller, what he does. What he does, and how he got interested in pesticide
So,
reform.
Mark Weller is a campaign director for California for Pesticides Reform, having joined the staff in 2014, the year he moved to Santa Cruz. Weller previously worked for 14 years as project director for the Monterey Bay-based union Unite Here Local 483, now Local 19. Organizing community and political support for hospitality workers. Weller has a BA in political science from University of California, San Diego, and MA in sociology from San Jose State University, and is co-author of Dollars and Votes: How Business Campaign Contributors Subvert Democracy. He is also a longtime New York Knicks basketball fan. That is the world champion New York Knicks added to the short bio. And that's who Mark Weller is. But today what we're going to talk about is, do we have him on the line? Mark, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, we lost you for a second. Good.
Good.
We got you on the line now. We did a little quick intro, but today what we're going to be talking about is, as a lot of people know, I did a hunger strike almost 9 months ago, and it's been 9 months, and the hunger strike was against pesticides to bring awareness to the community, to the students, and to our area about the harms of pesticides, and to ask companies like Driscoll's, companies like Giant Berry, companies to stop using harmful pesticides in our communities because they're harming our youth. And so it's been 9 months, and we're gonna have a news conference this Wednesday, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask Driscoll's, and we're gonna ask the Ag Commissioner, what have you done in those 9 months to help our community, to protect our community, and what have you done? So the conversation is gonna be a little bit about that. Also, the conversation is gonna be a little bit about what the CPR has done in the last year or so. What were some of the victories? What were some of the losses? What were some of the stuff that they've worked on? And we're glad to have you here on the show, Mark.
Thank you so much, Omar. And I'm so glad to be with you. And before we go any further, I do want to thank you. I would argue on behalf of the entire nation's pesticide reform movement that your work 9 months ago on that long fast really brought the kind of attention that we need to start making changes to make a better, healthier agricultural system for our communities.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And it was something that at the moment felt like it was something that needed to happen. And growing up in Watsonville, growing up around farm workers, and in the area where we are surrounded by fields, and we see a lot of the people that are living in our communities, young people, students, youth, teachers, farm workers, all having stories to tell about something, how pesticides has affected them in one way or another, how it's affected the Mother Earth, our drinking water, our air that we're breathing. And it just felt like at that moment in time we needed to bring some kind of awareness. And I will say this, the hunger strike brought a lot of awareness to a lot of people, and we're seeing that even more today because social media has been talking a lot about what's been going on in our area. So yes, the hunger strike was successful. The whole purpose of this radio interview is because we want to bring awareness to this news conference that's happening this Wednesday. It is going to be held in front of the Driscoll's headquarters and it's going to be at June 17th, 2026, noon, and right in front of the Driscoll's headquarters. And what we're asking is for the public to come out and support this movement against pesticides. It's going to be held at 345 West Ridge in Watsonville, California. And the questions are: what has Driscoll's and the Ag Commissioner done to protect our community, our youth, our teachers in schools, our farm workers, our Mother Earth, our air and water? So we're asking Pajaro Valley to come out and support and show up for our community. We're asking no more pesticides. We're asking Driscoll's for that 1 mile buffer zone away from schools. Stop spraying those pesticides. We're asking Driscoll's, you can make a change, and we're asking them to choose people over profit. And this is something that we've been, that we decided to do because like I said, there's been a lot of chatter online about Driscoll's and the harm that they've been doing to our communities and using these harmful pesticides. Were we able to get him back on the phone, Nanko? Yes, Mark, are you back on there?
I'm here.
Oh, good. We can hear you now.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot better.
Okay.
So, do you want to ask him that question again?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Mark, just telling us how you became interested in studying pesticides and the impact that it has in the community.
Yeah, well, I mean, you live in the Monterey Bay region long enough and drive past enough fields, and I was involved in the union movement for about 14 years, working with hospitality workers. But it just became clear that one of the biggest public health issues and environmental justice issues was pesticides. So in 2014, Californians for Pesticide Reform asked me to work for them, and so I took up the opportunity.
Right. Thank you, Mark. And, let me ask you this. How dangerous are pesticides still being used near our homes, schools, and farm workers and communities? And if there's somebody that could probably best answer that question, it's probably you, because I know I go to you to get a lot of answers. But how dangerous are these pesticides that are being sprayed near our communities?
Sure. Well, very much so. And one of the biggest problems is it's probably a lot worse than we know. And one of the reasons for this is people study pesticides usually one at a time, or sometimes a category of pesticides. But we don't really know how bad it is when people are exposed to a lot of pesticides, like the pesticide soup in the air all at once. And so our fear is it's even worse than looking at these individual pesticides. Now, the pesticides used in the Pajaro Valley are some of the worst that are used in the United States. We're talking about fumigants, which cause cancer, sometimes in very small amounts over time. Organophosphates, which damage brains, especially if a pregnant woman lives near them and is exposed to them. It can damage the fetus, and our children can be harmed for life. Asthma, if you talk to teachers, as I know you do, Omar,
yes,
many of them who've come from somewhere else and come here say, geez, all their kids have asthma. So these are some of the biggest problems that we're seeing from pesticide use in our region. It's high rates of cancer, high rates of asthma, high rates of special education in the schools. All of them are higher in Santa Cruz than they are in other parts of the state.
Learning disabilities. We also know that they could cause Alzheimer's disease, and I think there's different cancers that they're known to cause also.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important that we bring awareness to this problem, and we ask for some kind of change, because enough is enough. It's been going on for too long. And our farm workers are the ones that are in the front line of being exposed the most when these pesticides are being applied. And not only that, if they're not around when they're being applied in the fields, sometimes they come into the fields the day after and work in those fields, so they're getting exposed then. They don't have to be sprayed all the time for you to be exposed. Sometimes you just got to come in contact with those plants, rub your clothes, and what happens is when they come into contact with those plants, they get them under clothes. Guess what? When they go home, and they get home from a long day's of work, and they have these pesticides on them, who's the first person that runs up to them to give them a hug when they get home? Their kids.
Exactly.
And that's how it's being transferred to their families and to their loved ones. So it's not something that needs to be ignored. It's something that we need to address, and we need to bring changes. It's been going on for way too long. Our farm workers have been suffering from these exposures for many of years. I'm not the first one. You're not the first one, Mark, to bring this to the table and to talk about it.
Of course not.
And I know that our laws are weak, and I know that our laws protect a lot of the ag companies that are out there, it's a profit. It's a profit that they're making. So this is something that we need to address. Adela, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. So one of the questions that keeps coming up, especially in several news conferences, is how can the community get involved, especially as there has been more awareness throughout these different conferences. People want to know how to help, how to support, how to continue the conversation. So it's just not a one-time, conversation, but ongoing with real change.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly speak for Safe Ag, Safe Schools, which is the regional branch of Californians for pesticide reform. And they've been around since even before I started working with them in 2014. And so that's an example of a long-term growing movement. And Yaneli Martinez is the Safe Ag Safe Schools organizer in the region. She lives in Greenfield, but she operates in both Monterey and Santa Cruz counties. And then the other thing that's happening right now immediately is a whole class of pesticides called PFAS, or forever pesticides. There's a bill in Sacramento right now that's passed the Assembly and is moving to the state Senate, AB 1603. And if that passes the Senate and the governor signs it, that will put a moratorium on future pesticides made with these forever chemicals. And it will also require that they become pesticides that will be notified through the spray days system. The spray days system is one of the victories the movement had last year, first in the world online pesticide notification system, so people can find out in advance for the first time ever when pesticide will be applied near them by either going online or getting a text or email from the state at least a day in advance.
And Mark, you mentioned something very informative. Very important. You mentioned the PFAS. Can you tell us what PFAS stands for? It's let me see, pesticides. For pesticides are no. Can you please explain that to me, please?
Sure. So for years, actually for decades now, there's a chemical that is used in a lot of different industries, including like the stuff that's in Teflon. And, there've been movies about this kind of stuff too. And they're forever chemicals. They're chemicals that do not break down, or at least they don't break down in our lifetimes. So if we get them in our bodies, they're there forever, right? And human beings have never had this before the last couple generations. So we're noticing that it can cause all kinds of awful things. Some of the PFAS pesticides, for instance, have been linked to childhood cancer. So if you have that stuff in your body, it's there forever. And there are cities now that have levels of PFAS in their water that are way above what even our weak regulators say are safe. So this bill could at least start the process saying, okay, no more of that stuff. And then I think what we got to do is move to to phasing them out and banning them. Many countries have already started to do that. In fact, California is behind some other states in getting rid of these forever chemicals that are made in pesticides. So there are about 53 pesticides now that have these forever chemicals in them, and we want to get rid of them all.
And when you talk about forever, they stay in the body forever. That means what you're literally saying, forever. They're never going to leave the body. And if they get into our water, they're never going to leave our water. They're never going to leave our dirt. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important that we bring awareness to this, because these are chemicals that the word says it all. PFAS, they're forever chemicals. And we need to start protecting Mother Earth, protecting human life, and just bringing awareness and educating the young people, our communities, to stand up and to fight for a better future. Because if we don't take care of Mother Earth, we only have one Mother Earth to take care of it. And if we don't take care of her, guess what? Where are we going to end up?
Yep.
You know?
We don't have another one.
Yeah, we don't have another one to move to. I mean, it's very scary to hear that these chemicals stay forever in the body.
Yeah, well, I'm just shocked to hear that. Oh, sorry. I'm just shocked as I'm listening, to hear that the harm of pesticides, like the impact. I live in Watsonville, and so the other day I was walking at the levee, and I was just having a regular walk. I came across an older female who she shared with me she was a nurse, and she told me, like, she was wearing something where she was covering her mouth. She told me, why aren't you covering your mouth? And I was like, she said, they just sprayed some pesticides around here. It's really bad. And so in that moment, I didn't really think about how harmful, pesticides were. I mean, this was a while ago, but anyhow, long story short, as I'm hearing you both speak, I'm just thinking like, wow, sometimes like we could live within the community where pesticides are continuously being sprayed, but if there's no awareness, like no conversations happening, or even us who, live in the community are aware of all this impact, how damaging it could be to the body.
Yeah. And it was really disheartening to see the op-ed piece in the Sentinel. Was that just 2 days ago, where the person who wrote it was quoting the Farm Bureau and the Strawberry Commission, and their point appeared to be, as a reader, and I'm not sure it was their intent, but their point seemed to be, hey, things are just as bad in Santa Cruz as they are everywhere else, so we're not going to make any changes. I just think that's a horrible argument to make. I mean, one is actually things are worse in Santa Cruz than in many other places in California when it comes to pesticides. But two, well, even if they weren't, I mean, why would we put up with using pesticides that are banned in dozens of other countries? The pesticide that is used around Ohlone Elementary School and all over the Pajaro Valley is a pesticide called 1,3-D. It's a fumigant that's used before the planting of berries, like strawberries. And that stuff can drift for miles at harmful levels. And the state's cancer experts at the Office of Environmental Health Hazard have determined that the lifetime cancer risk threshold for being exposed to this stuff in the air is 0.04 parts per billion, very, very small, per day. And but they've been testing the air at Ohlone Elementary School since 2011, the end of 2011, and the concentration in the air over time has been more than twice. It's actually been 0.09 parts per billion. So even by the state's weak standards, children and the community around Ohlone Elementary, where it's one of the few places we have a pesticide air monitor, has been telling us that the cancer threshold has been surpassed by twice as much as people should be exposed to, and the state is doing nothing. And the ag commissioner needs to do more, and that's one of the reasons why I know Omar mentioned it earlier, the community is calling for 1 mile buffer zones around schools, not just the quarter mile that's required by law right now, to push back the use of these drift-prone pesticides, to better protect kids at school at least.
You mentioned the ag commissioner. For the people that might not be aware of what their role is, can you tell us about who the ag commissioner is and what their role is?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Every county has an agricultural commissioner, and their job is to enforce the law regarding pesticide applications that growers and their workers make. And they're also supposed to protect public health. And that's where we often butt heads, because we don't think they're doing enough to protect public health. They're not just supposed to protect the growing conditions for the growers. They're supposed to protect us too. And so they, most of them also have some extra duties, like they, I think they calibrate things regarding gas stations and things like that. But really, their main job is to look over the agricultural system and make sure it's lawful. And our ag commissioner in Santa Cruz, his name is David Sanford, and I would argue he's probably more concerned about public health than most ag commissioners. In fact, he's working with us to try to get some pilot projects to replace these awful fumigants with a steam soil disinfestation. So we won't be using these awful cancer-causing pesticides, but steam, which is less concerning. That will cost money, so that's why we want the state to provide some money to the growers who would be part of this pilot project. So he's doing that. No other ag commissioner is. All right, so that's a good thing. However, we've also requested 1 mile buffer zones. We know it's possible because the rule in Imperial County of California is they have 1 mile buffer zones around schools for aerial applications. So you can't apply pesticides by air during school days within a mile of schools out there. So we know that ag commissioners can make buffer zones that are bigger, and that's what we think we should do in Santa Cruz, where the concentration of fumigants is probably as high as it is anywhere else in the state, in the Pajaro Valley.
Right. Mark, we're gonna take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about, you mentioned the air monitors, you mentioned Ohlone School. I want to talk about that a little bit more when we come back, but we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, KSQT Prunedale. You're listening to From the Streets with your host Adela and Omar, and we'll be right back. That's right, you're listening to KSQD, KSQT, and you're on From the Streets with your host Omar Dieguez and Adela Naranjo. And on the phone we have Mark Weller, who works for the California Pesticides Reform. And Mark, I wanted to talk about, you mentioned the air monitor machines that they have and the Ohlone School. And I was alarmed to find out, I've sat in one of the meetings with the DPR, where I asked the question, how often do they turn these air monitors on to collect the information when pesticides are being used and get all that data? And I was alarmed to find out that they only turn it on once a week for 24 hours. And my question was, well, if you guys are turning it on once a week, who's determining when to turn those machines on, and are you doing it on days when pesticides are being sprayed or not being sprayed? Mm-hmm. That's alarming, and I'm also, listening to you speak about that they moved the air monitor from Ohlone School, which collected so much data, which the data said that there's being exposed to way more than they need to be exposed to these harmful pesticides, and now they moved that air monitor to Pajaro. I wonder if it was intentionally done.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the history of that air monitor is, I guess, getting more interesting now. It was put in as a result of a civil rights lawsuit. The case was called Angelita C. versus the Department of Pesticide Regulation, and Angelita C. was a pseudonym for a mother of a child that went to Ohlone Elementary School, and she and some other parents with kids in other parts of the state challenged the state over the high use of pesticides near their kids and said it was racially unjust. It was a violation of their civil rights. And the federal government slow-walked the investigation. It took them 11 years, right? And in the end, they said, yeah, you're right. It's racial discrimination. So what we're going to do is we're going to put an air monitor in there to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so that's how we got the air monitor at the end of 2011 at Ohlone Elementary School. So we were also a little concerned when they said they were going to move it. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's there because of civil rights thing. That's not something you can move. But because Ohlone Elementary School is up on the hill, and Pajaro Middle is down in the valley, we think that there might be even more accurate information about how bad the concentration of these fumigants and other pesticides are, because it will, get stuck kind of in the valley rather than just blown away by the wind up at Ohlone Elementary. So in the end, we're not completely opposed to them moving that pesticide monitor, given that the state only has 6 right now, and they're going to be adding 4. But in the entire state, that's the one we have to play with. So I think it's going to be okay that they try to use the slot at Pajaro Middle, which is down in the valley, right?
Well, and my concern is, that air monitor right there is supposed to collect data, but what people don't know is that air monitor right there is collecting data not just for Pajaro Valley. It's supposed to collect data for all of up to Monterey County, right?
Yeah,
Monterey County and Santa Cruz County.
Scientifically not true. Yeah, no, no. I mean, no scientist thinks that that's actually. I mean, you can't know from a measurement in Pajaro what the pesticide concentration is in Salinas.
Right.
I mean, that's just,
that's what the DPR is saying, right?
You're right, and you and I were at a meeting when the Monterey County Ag Commissioner pretty much said that.
He's saying I'm going off the data that's being collected, but this air monitor is in Pajaro, and it's collecting data for Salinas. That's two different areas, miles away from each other, and how is that just? How is that collecting accurate data? And those air monitors, like I said, once again, they're only coming on once a week for 24 hours. How much information are we truly collecting? How accurate is the information that we are collecting? Can you imagine if we had those monitors on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how much more information we'd be collecting and how much more alarming that information would be? Yeah. Because I know from spray days, Ohlone School, I'm overwhelmed with text messages, emails. Every time they're spraying pesticides, I'm like, it's insane. So how accurate are that data that they're collecting? In my opinion, it's not showing true numbers.
Yeah, we've wrestled with the department over this very issue, Omar, and they claim that the days are chosen randomly. But one of the problems with that is the applications near schools are not even close to random. They can during the school year, the law now is they can only apply fumigants basically from Friday night to Saturday night, because there has to be a 36-hour gap between the last fumigation and the beginning of school at 6 a.m. on Monday. So if your sample is from Monday, you're likely to get a pretty high figure. But if your sample is on Thursday, it's likely to be really low. And so if your Thursday sample represents the whole week, yeah, you've got a messed up sample.
And the other thing that I've noticed is that, like you were talking about the window of from the moment that they spray and the day and then the moment that students are allowed back into schools and to the communities where pesticides have been applied. We know that the ag commissioner is a small office. They don't have a big crew that's enforcing these rules. I don't know exactly how many employees the ag commissioner has to go out there and to make sure that these regulations are being followed, but they have to cover a big area, and I'm just gonna throw a number out there, but I think there's probably only about four people in his office that are doing that job, which is not enough people to make sure that these regulations are being followed.
Yeah. Well, that's a that's a resource problem for sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I've been learning that I find alarming, that has been going on too long, and people don't know these things. People don't know that people are not out there making sure that these regulations are being honored, that they're being followed. People don't know that air monitor is only coming on once a week. It's not running 24/7. People don't know these things and people need to get educated and know this information, because once people know these things, they might get a little angry and get up and ask for better regulations, better laws to protect our communities.
Yeah, and in the lines of like data, I'm also curious, like, how does like people's testimonies, how can we like not only look at numbers but also make sure that we're listening to the stories, like the data testimonies from people where we could hear directly how they're being impacted, because numbers is one thing, right? And I think one thing that I heard come up right now is like the numbers are not accurate. They're not really reflective of, the Pajaro Valley. But how could we take into account the testimonies from people? So more so like hearing from them the impacts of pesticides. And that comes up to me. Yeah.
No, I think that point you're just making is one of the reasons that we've had, the pesticide reform movement has had more success in the last several years than they had previously, because during public hearings that the Department of Pesticide Regulation have been holding, both in person and online, we now have, an army of people from farmer communities, farm workers themselves, who have been telling their stories at these public hearings. And I think that's had a significant impact on some of the decision makers, at least. Not enough yet. I mean, we still have a huge fight ahead of us, but that's where it's been happening. And, when we have people from farmer communities who are courageous enough, especially during these times when, speaking out can be punished in ways that we haven't seen in a long time, at least, by the federal government, I think it adds to their power that people are courageous and speaking. So that's been a huge part of the success of the movement, I think. Yeah.
And you know what, Mark? When I did the hunger strike, I was fortunate enough to hear a lot of these stories of field workers that worked in the fields and were exposed to these. I've heard stories of people being in the fields. People that actually experienced this told me these stories of them working in the fields while they're spraying pesticides in the field next to them, and then coming home covered in this white dust like a flake. They described it. They would have to get home and before they entered the house, scratch the flakes off of their body and then get their clothes, throw them away, and then shower outside before they even came into the house. Those stories exist. Those stories are out there. I've heard so many stories from other people. I've heard stories of people working in the fields. I heard of a story of this man working in the fields, and his brother, the helicopter came down to spray, and it flew so low that his brother got picked up by the propeller and swung him out, killed him. You know, so and it's like these stories are out there, and these companies are making a profit off of our own people, the farm workers that are out there fighting so hard, not fighting, but working so hard to provide the food and to pick these crops, and it's been going on for so long. We haven't given them the dignity, the respect to honor them for the work that they do, and we need to change something. Something needs to change. It's been going on. These companies have been getting getting away with it for such a long time.
Yeah, we definitely need stronger regulations. And your thoughts, Mark, what other regulations do you think can be enforced so that, not only the quantitative data, but the qualitative, the testimonies could make an impact? What other considerations do you come to mind to you?
Sure. Well, one of the a couple of the successes from the past year are that the movement has opened up space for these voices to be heard. So in one way, we have the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee now, which was the result of a bill 2 years ago, AB 652, which created the first Environmental Justice Advisory Committee of, I think, 11 members and then 3 alternates. 5 of them are Safe Ag, Safe Schools members. So this is a really good step to opening space for the stories to be heard, and we heard a lot of them in Salinas for their second meeting back in April. So that's one good thing. Another thing I think that's open space is the spray days notification system, where people can get information about what pesticides are going to be used. I think it's caused a lot of buzz. People are talking about it. People are asking, well, what's this pesticide? Methanol? What does it do? What's it? And people start to educate themselves and seeking out other people. So those are forums, spaces for us to push forward. But as far as the actual policies we want, we believe that you don't need to use organophosphates anymore. I mean, the use has gone down except in a few places like Monterey County, and we know they harm kids' brains from studies that have been done over the last 25 years in the Salinas Valley of women and their children who are now young adults. And so we need to get rid of those. The fumigants that are used in the Bajo Valley are banned in dozens of countries, more than 40 countries, for both 1,3-dichloropropene and another one called chloropicrin, which was the vomiting gas in World War I that made it so it seeped into the gas mask, so the soldiers had to pull them off, and then they would be exposed to even more deadly chemicals. You can't use that on the battlefield anymore, but you can use it right in the field, right next to a school.
That's crazy. That's insane. Yeah. So these are the kind of things that we think are obvious. Other countries have done, and the pushback is always like, "Well, we can't live without them." Well, I mean, other countries have figured it out. Are we the dumbest country? Is that why we can't figure it out? No, it's what Omar said earlier. It's all about the money, right? And these awful pesticides are also cheaper to farm with. So that's why with a political system that's run by campaign donations, big ag, pesticide companies, they have a lot of pull. And even with an assembly and state senate that's dominated by, a party that's supposed to be pro-worker and pro-farm worker, we still struggle to get protective laws through because money talks in politics, unfortunately, in the United States at least. Mark, all this all this awareness that was brought to this pesticides movement from the hunger strike, then all this talk that's been going on lately on social media with all these all these influencers just talking about Driscoll's and talking about how the cancer rates are high in our area in Pajaro Valley, Monterey County, and they're talking about how these pesticides are causing cancer. And they're throwing some numbers out there. And the purpose of this news conference is that we want to bring awareness to this problem. And we want to kind of like also take this as a teaching moment to be able to come out and get some of the facts straight. We know that these chemicals are causing cancer. We know that these chemicals are hurting our children. We know that these chemicals are contaminating our Mother Earth, our water. And so, we want to hold these companies accountable for their actions. They're choosing profits over people. And so that's why we're having this news conference this Wednesday, and we're calling it Enough is Enough. It's a pesticides news conference, and we're going to ask the questions. What has Driscoll's and the Ag Commissioner done to protect us? There's a lot of attention to this problem. We are demanding questions to be answered. What has Driscoll's and the Ag Commissioner done to protect our community, our youth, our teachers, our schools, our farm workers, our Mother Earth, our air and water? How many more people have to die for us to get some kind of answer, some kind of something? Because I could tell you right now, I haven't heard anything from Driscoll's. We've sat in meetings with the Ag Commissioner. I will say that he has brought some kind of ideas forward, and he's talked about a STEAM project and some other projects. But when is that going to happen? A lot of this is going to take funding. It's going to take people to come together to bring the change. It's not going to happen overnight. We need change now. We need to protect our students. We know that a lot of these fields that are around the schools in the Pajaro Valley, there's over, I think, 13 schools that are either sitting directly across the street, or if not, their backyard. A fence divides a strawberry field or any field where pesticides are being sprayed. Why can't Driscoll's convert those to organic fields right away? Why can't Driscoll's donate money to education to find better solutions to farming? We know that they donate money to a lot of places in our area. Why don't they donate money to education to find better farming ways? But there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and that's why we're having this news conference on Wednesday, and we're inviting all the public. And I think the way that we need to pitch this is that we need our neighbors to come out and to help us fight this fight against pesticides. We need people that are not from Pajaro Valley to come out and say they stand with us. I know that, we have neighbors in Santa Cruz. We have neighbors in neighboring towns. We need them to come out and support the farm workers, support our fight. We can't do this alone. This is a fight that needs to be fought by everybody. We've been exposed for too long. You mentioned earlier, this is environmental racism. So there's a lot that people could do, and sometimes maybe making a sign and showing up to the news conference and holding your sign, that's a start. Start educating yourself. Sign up for spray days, get those notifications so that you can start seeing what kind of chemicals are being sprayed in your neighborhoods, your grandma's neighborhood, your school, your kids are going to. Find out what's being used around those areas. Educate yourself. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, KSQT Prundale, and you're on From the Streets with your host, Omar Dieguez, and Adela Naranjo will be right back. You're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, KSQT Prundale. You're on From the Streets with your host, Omar Dieguez, and Adela Naranjo. And Mark, we got a few minutes left. I wanna ask Adela a question. Adela, for people that don't know this, Adela was one of the She was probably the one that stood by me throughout the whole hunger strike. She was there to make sure that I was okay. She was also taking me to a lot of the presentations that I was doing. I want to hear from you, Adela. What was that experience what was that experience for you? And not only that, but throughout that experience, I got to meet your dad, who your dad is worked for the UFW. Your dad also was exposed to pesticides, and that was an honor to be able to meet him. What was that experience for you like?
Yeah, that's a great question, Omar. So when I, met you, we were organizing for the community, protecting, undocumented families, doing a lot of work around that. And when I heard you talk about doing your hunger strike, I was impressed, but also like amazed that you were going to take on this, I don't know if challenge is the appropriate word to use, but that you were going to go through this experience for the community. And I said, oh, this person has a lot of love for the community because they are willing to sacrifice and go through the pain of a hunger strike for the love of the community and to bring awareness.
But throughout that experience, I also got to learn a lot about your dad and hear some of his stories.
Yeah.
I mean, and you got to hear some stories you didn't know about.
And that's the part, that's what I was going to mention. My dad has been working in the strawberry fields for more than 30 years. And growing up at the age of 8, I was already translating for him a lot of the injustices that he has experienced. 1, for speaking up. 2, for joining a union. 3, for, bringing up to his mayordomos, like the rashes in his skin. At 8 years old, I did not know what I was trying to translate. And so these book words, even right now, like when I hear the names of the different pesticides, like I can't even pronounce them, but I try my best, And so I'm one of the children that I'm pretty sure we have here in Santa Cruz County who help my dad translate to his doctors about, the rashes that he was getting from pesticides.
Wow. Mark.
Yep.
We have a couple minutes left. I want to give you the floors to say anything you want to say about pesticides, talk about anything you want. The floor is yours.
Sure. Well, I mean, pesticides have been a central public and labor issue in California for generations now. And the work that Omar has been doing is on the shoulders of a lot of that work in the past, from, Rachel Carson to the United Farm Workers to previous iterations of this movement in the Monterey Bay region. The struggle continues. But if we do keep raising the voices that we talked about in this episode, and if we do join together and turn out, what we know from history is people power can push to change things. We can overcome this domination by moneyed interests, but it takes fighting smart and strategically, and I think that we're seeing a lot of really good movement in that direction as far as pesticide reform goes in our state. In many ways we're leading the way in this fight, when I say we, I mean the Monterey Bay region for the state, because we have a number of incredible leaders in this movement, not just Omar, but people like Yaneli Martinez and Kathleen and Kilpatrick and Woody Rahanic.
A lot of people.
A lot of people. Providence, Alanis, and on and on. So we need to keep the pressure on. And I hope that people listening will join us, not just on Wednesday at noon at the headquarters of Driscoll Berries, which is very close to the Monterey County Ag Commissioner's office.
Yes.
But beyond that as well.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for being here on the show. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here. Thank you, Adela, for being here, putting up with me for another show. But enough is enough. Pesticides news conference happening this Wednesday in front of the Discro. Oh my God! Driscoll's, the tongue twister in front of Driscoll's, and we're asking the Ag Commissioner and Driscoll's, what have you done to protect our community, our youth, our teachers, our schools, our farm workers, our Mother Earth, our air, our water? This is going to be happening at 345 Westridge Drive in Watsonville, California. We're asking for our neighbors, for our community to come out there and support this fight. Come and get you educated. Come and do your part by showing up. And I appreciate everybody for listening in. This has been another show of From the Streets. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.